This is the 2023 Samsung Galaxy Book 3 Ultra, and I must say it packs a punch, runs cool and quiet, and has phenomenal build quality. Now, the price tag on it is a little steep for quite a few people in the comment section, and even I would say for myself, to fork out $3,000 for a laptop does seem pretty substantial, but you have incredible build quality, an i9-13900H, an RTX 4070 GPU, and 32 gigs of RAM. So it has everything it needs, in my opinion, to deserve that $3,000 price tag. Now you can get the i7-13700H with 16 gigs of RAM and an RTX 4050 for about $2,399. However, the issue I see with that specific laptop is the 16 gigs of RAM. What we saw recently when reviewing the Galaxy Book 3 Pro 360 is 16 gigs of RAM was a bottleneck for the system when trying to do extensive multitasking. So you're running big, heavy projects with multiple layers in Photoshop. You're trying to run Spotify, trying to run Google Chrome. You're trying to run Adobe InDesign or maybe even Premiere Pro all at the same time, and that RAM is used up quickly. And being that both the Book 3 Ultra and the Book 3 Pro 360 are not upgradable. So basically what you purchase the laptop with online is what you're going to stay with. This can create a situation. So personally, if I were going to be buying this laptop, I would go for the i9 version with the RTX 4070 with 32 gigs of RAM because I believe that is the best component setup for this specific model. If you're considering the i7 version, I honestly think that the Book 3 Pro 360 is just as good because that 16 gigs of RAM may have a tendency to bottleneck that H series processor and that RTX 4050. So take it for what it is. Now, if you're curious about the exact live pricing, I'll put links in the description below. Of course, if you do make a purchase, I'll get a small commission, but at no extra cost to you. Of course, that's what keeps this channel alive and the helpful content coming your way. Over the past few years, my wife has had her personal information stolen and accounts opened without her approval. A while back, we found some of these accounts and took action to eliminate these issues. That's why I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, Aura. We've been using Aura to monitor our personal information online for over a year now and have been able to reclaim control of our personal data. Aura will identify data brokers that are exposing your information and automatically submit opt-out requests on your behalf. Anyone can find anything on the internet, including your full legal name, your personal email, your home address, phone number, and even your relatives. This information is accessible because of data brokers who profit by selling your information to robocallers, telemarketers, spammers, and anyone else that wants to learn more about you. Aura will even opt you out of junk mail and telemarketing list. You can use my link by going to aura.com/BenjiKaiser to try a 2-week free trial to see how many data brokers are sharing your information. Aura's app also features a VPN, password manager, real-time credit and identity theft monitor, internet parental controls, and protects your devices from malware. Aura has almost every internet safety tool you'll ever need, all inside one app. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up right now, Aura will give you a 2-week free trial with my link in the video description. You'll be shocked at how much of your private information Aura finds exposed over those 2 weeks. It's quite frightening, actually. Aura.com/BenjiKaiser or scan the QR code on the screen right now. I think you'll be very happy with the protection that you receive and the level of comfort that you get by using Aura. We have been extremely happy using it for over a year, and I definitely recommend it. All right, now that we've talked about all the models available and perhaps which one you should choose, let's get into this specific model. Now, the build quality is fantastic. I've done a full walkthrough on my thoughts of the build quality and usability during the unboxing, but of course you can see the weight and thickness coming up on the screen, and I love how this thing is assembled. The bottom cover is put very nicely into the side panels. It looks great. For a quick walkthrough of the ports, you have HDMI, 2 USB Type-Cs, and of course a headphone jack, USB Type-A, and a micro SD card reader. Now, in regards to the screen flex of this laptop, it opens and closes easily with one hand, but when you let go, it does have quite a bit of bounce with that hinge. Now for the screen flex, it's definitely wobbly. Not only does it bounce, but it has like quite a bit of screen flex up near the top. So if that's something that you'd be concerned about, you might want to consider a 14-inch model of this laptop if you don't need all the performance that it has. Taking a look at the screen, this is a highlight of this laptop. It's a 16-inch OLED display, 2880 by 1800 is the resolution, and it has great brightness, color accuracy, and color gamut range. It is a phenomenal screen. I mean, just look at how rich those colors are on this screen. Now for the keyboard, we do have that classic Ultrabook keyboard. It's a short key travel, quiet with a little bit of snap to it, so pretty satisfying. And if you ever typed on like a MacBook Pro keyboard, they're very like clicky. It's not as clicky as the new scissor switch keyboards that Apple has put out, but it is close. Got a numpad on the right side, which pushes the trackpad over and kills me, but they did it. So it lines up with the keyboard instead of with the chassis. For left-handed users, this is fantastic. For right-handed users, I feel like I'm kind of shifted over a little bit. I won't complain too much because I've complained a lot in other videos. Now, taking a look at the webcam, here's a quick sample of the webcam so you can see what it looks and sounds like. This is the webcam on the Samsung Galaxy Book3 Ultra and a little sample of the audio for you as well. And before I forget, here's a quick sample of me using the keyboard and trackpad so you can hear what that sounds like. Now the speakers in this laptop were not as good as I would hope because there's no upward facing speakers. Speakers come out down here at the bottom of the chassis on each side. Not necessarily the best audio experience, but hear for yourself. Here's a quick sample of the audio coming out of this laptop. Now the trackpad is something that I really like. It's a glass trackpad. It is a manual click trackpad, so it's not a vibration click. And the click begins about halfway down the trackpad is when you can actually activate the click. When you're up at the top here, it can't click because it hinges at the top of the trackpad when it connects to the chassis. But it feels great. It's nice and quiet, very firm, very confident, and it's assembled very nicely. No rattle with the assembly to the chassis. Now the performance modes on this laptop are great. They really do have good control of the components in the laptop. You can see with the different export times out of Premiere Pro, as well as the thermal temperatures and fan noise, this laptop stays cool and quiet for a lot of solid export times out of Premiere Pro. So I was very happy to see that. I know a lot of people had concerns about the thermals and the fan noise that would be coming out of this laptop because it is so thin and light, and it really is. But as you can see, we had solid export times, great thermals, and great fan noise. Very, very happy to see that. Now in some of the other benchmarks, you'll see something like SolidWorks was really lacking in performance. So this isn't the biggest heavy hitter when it comes to GPU extensive tasks, but it still does get good performance for the most part, for most creator use cases. Now the upgrade path is something that's annoying as far as RAM is concerned. However, for storage, you do have access to 2 M.2 slots. One occupied when you order it from wherever you're ordering from, and one unoccupied, so you can even add an extra drive to this laptop. So that puts this laptop above a lot of Ultrabooks which don't have any upgrade path opportunity. For instance, the MacBook Pros, what you buy it with is what it stays with. This laptop, you can not only swap the one it comes with, but you can also add another one, which is great for creators setting up maybe a main OS drive and then another drive for where you save all your files to create more efficiency and more performance with the laptop. Now the battery life is good, but not necessarily stellar. The reason being is you don't have as much control over the components as something like a Lenovo laptop or an Asus laptop, say with Lenovo Vantage or Asus's Armory Crate. What those two programs allow you to do is turn off the dedicated GPU and access only the CPU. So for instance, with a processor like the Ryzen 9 6900HS, you can get upwards of 12 hours and 43 minutes of battery life out of a Asus Zephyrus G14 because you can turn off the dedicated GPU and run only on the very efficient CPU. That is not offered here with Samsung's performance controls. However, the performance controls do allow you to change between quiet mode, optimized mode, and performance mode, which do help with battery life, just not as much as we would all hope. This isn't going to be like an all-day video editing laptop. You're going to want to bring the charger along with you. Now, let's go ahead and jump into the performance benchmarks for the Samsung Galaxy Book3 Ultra. Just as a reminder, this is the i9-13900H, 32 gigs of RAM, and the RTX 4070. You can see here in the single-core performance that it gets great performance and outpaces its little brother, the Pro 360 with the i7-1360p. But like I said, if I was going to choose between the i9 and the i7 version of the Book 3 Ultra, I would go for the i9 because as you can see here for single core performance, the i7 1360p with the Galaxy Book 3 Pro 360 is only about 100 points behind this laptop, and the Book 3 Pro 360 gets better battery life. So by choosing the i7, you're going to get worse battery life, but you're not going to tap into all the performance of the i9, the 32 gigs of RAM, and the RTX 4070. So I think that i7 is kind of a weird option for that laptop, especially that it doesn't have 32 gigs of RAM as an option when purchasing online. Now looking at the multi-core performance, this is where you can see we get a bit of separation between the Ultra and the Book 3 Pro 360, about 2,000 points between the two of them. Now I'm going to do a full dedicated head-to-head review between the Book 3 Pro 360 and the Book 3 Ultra. Keep an eye out for that on the channel. I'll link it up at the end once it's available. Now for Cinebench R23 single core performance, you can see once again, neck and neck on single core performance, okay? So that's why I think the Pro 360 and the Book 3 Ultra i9 are the ones that you ought to compare. Now jumping back into multi-core performance for Cinebench R23, once again, you can see the spread increase. So for multi-core performance, you're definitely going to want to consider the Galaxy Book 3 Ultra. It's got 32 gigs of RAM and it has an i9 processor with more cores and threads, giving you a little bit of an advantage. Now jumping into Photoshop, the Galaxy Book 3 Ultra does very well. It scores a 1,146, a great score for Photoshop. The RAM is a big help for that, and then the dedicated GPU does a little bit of extra heavy lifting here and there. The GPUs don't help tremendously with Photoshop, but they do some tasks here and there. Now as we move into After Effects, you can see a good score, a 931 on par with most of the common gaming laptops, so no problems there inside of After Effects. Now, as we get into Blender, Blender does score well too. You can see the Legion 5 Pro from last year outpaces it by almost 100 points, but that is a thicker laptop, a little bit more breathing room for that cooling system, allows those components to really ramp up a bit more. And you have the RTX 3070 Ti, which a lot of people were wondering, 3070 Ti versus RTX 4070, it really depends what laptop you get those components within. When it comes to this thin and light chassis, they have to throttle it a little bit so the laptop doesn't overheat, which is why we're seeing slightly diminished performance versus something like the Legion 5 Pro. Now looking at Autodesk 3ds Max, Autodesk Maya, and PTC Creo, we see good performance out of the Galaxy Book 3 Ultra. It's not blowing away laptops from last year because, again, thin and light chassis with powerful components means some thermal throttling, but it is still on par with them, which is great because if you had those components from last year inside of this chassis, we would see diminished performance below these laptops from last year. So again, you're kind of comparing these thicker gaming laptops to more of a thin and light on-the-go friendly laptop, and that's the performance we're seeing. However, once we jump into SolidWorks, we see much more diminished performance because SolidWorks not only doesn't like GeForce gaming GPUs from NVIDIA, but it's also in a thin and light chassis, so it doesn't get to just really push out that performance to overcome that. As you can see, the laptops that do perform well are the RTX A5000, that is a workstation GPU from NVIDIA, the RX 6700S, which is a Radeon GPU inside of the G14, and then of course you have, the RTX 3070 Ti, which you would think would get crazy performance because it's in the big, thick gaming laptop, the Legion 5 Pro, but it still only scores a 116. So my recommendation for SolidWorks is always workstation GPUs from NVIDIA or the Radeon RX series from AMD. Let's get into video editing in Premiere Pro. The playback is solid for 4K, of course. We're seeing really no laptop struggling with 4K playback if they have a dedicated GPU and a current processor after, say, 10th gen from Intel. So playback is not a concern for 4K and even export times for 4K. 6K BRAW does very well, almost getting 0 dropped frames. Looking at red footage, this wouldn't necessarily be my top pick for red footage, but it does manage it quite well out of the 16,177 frames total in the project. Now, jumping a little bit ahead of myself, let's look at the 6K export time. This is an area that I was a little disappointed in, not gonna lie, because if you look at the chart, the average export time for a gaming laptop for 6K BRAW is around the 14-minute to 17-minute export time. This Galaxy Book Ultra has a 21 minute and 38 second export time. So to me, underperforming in the BRAW export time domain. However, looking at 4K, we have one of the best export times I've seen on my channel with a 2 minute and 32 second export time. And for 1080p, if you're a 1080p video editor, that is the best export time I've ever seen on my channel out of a laptop for 1080p. So big win for the Galaxy Book Ultra. Now for DaVinci Resolve, a 6 minute and 17 second export time. Good, but nothing earth shattering. I expected more out of the latest RTX 40 series and Intel 13th generation, but we're still just kind of pacing along with the averages here on that export time. Punch for punch, you know my thoughts on which one you should pick between the Book3 Pro 360, the i7, and the i9. So let's just say for the i9, should you buy this laptop? If you're looking for thin and light performance, with the latest Intel 13th gen and RTX 4070 with a solid amount of ceiling to use for your multitasking, aka the 32 gigs of RAM, and it is a fantastic buy. It has a large trackpad, very nice keyboard, fantastic screen that is a little wobbly, not gonna lie, and overall great build quality. The battery life is on par with most gaming laptops, but doesn't blow them away. Probably one of my disappointing aspects of the laptop, but punch for punch, is it worth that $3,000? Yes, it is. It is a little more on the premium side of the price point, but you're getting premium build quality with a premium screen and premium components. So if you're not willing to fork out the money and you don't see the value in it, then pass. Perhaps look for another laptop. Click or tap the screen here for more videos about the Galaxy Book3 Ultra, and of course, links in the description below if you want to make a purchase. I'll get a small commission, but at no extra cost to you. I'll see you here in the next video.